Springtime on the farm. We're going to be talking in this video about organization, not only for the farm, but also for the orchard, the garden, and the house. So hang on with us while we go through each category, interchanging them as we go along to find out some of the key things that you can be doing to help prepare your farm for the spring and also for the summer. The jobs we've got to do before it gets too hot. We're only a couple of weeks into spring here and we're already reaching 30-degree days here in Dubbo. Tell me what temperatures you're reaching in the comment section below. So I'm going to be looking down and back up to you during this video as I do have some notes. I didn't want to miss out on anything. So let's talk about spring. So a lot of the jobs that we are doing here on the farm, and I'm sure you will be doing as well, I've added some of those that we aren't doing here, but may be applicable for your farm and your setup. So for the beginning of spring, some of the jobs we usually do would be shearing. It would be setting up irrigation systems, whether you're on a center pivot or rolling system, or whether you're using flood irrigation, making sure that you have everything in place for that. Everything is serviced and everything is in good working order. Do that at the beginning of the season before it gets hot, before you want to use your irrigation, just in case there is any breakdowns. Now shearing, I said before, same there. Go over your combs, your cutters, your motors, your actual shearing shed. Anything needs changing? Does anything need upgrading? Do you need to order anything to have that on hand ready to go for when you need to use it? If you drench at the same time you are shearing, make sure you have that on. If you need something else specifically for your rams, or whether you do anything, if you have a late lambing season instead of lambing in winter, so they're ready for the fresh peck in spring. If you have a late lambing, making sure you've got everything for your lambs and everything set up. It's also a good time if you're doing an inventory and doing setup for shearing, make sure you got some of your summer stuff as well to make sure you've got your ear notches, your marking material, anything for crutching, anything for your setup. Make sure you go through that. If you don't have a list because it's your first year on the farm or you haven't been on farm very long, then keeping a detailed note that what you do use, when you do use it, will be helpful to reflect on later, whether that's in a paddock book, a notepad on your computer, or if it's just written in lists on your calendar, so that is a quick reference guide for each month for you on the farm. Now we've also got things like, do you have any annual tractor checks? If you're going to be doing hay season or doing any additional cropping, cutting, even if it's slashing, putting in fire breaks, we do that in spring. So make sure that the equipment that you're using, whether it's your slasher, your tractor, anything like that, make sure that it's had its service, make sure it's up to date, make sure everything is working well with that. If you're going into town to do an oil order or pick parts up, then that's great to do that for your tractors, your bikes, your utes, all at once. And then that's one great big day in town, and organize something fun while you're in there doing all of that. So a lot of the time, this time of year, freshening up your paperwork, ready for spring, ready for summer. For a lot of us, we're just really starting to get back into that busy season after a small break during the cooler months. So making sure that if you need to do a spring boot camp or a spring clean of your office, of your paperwork, getting everything organized for spring, and then leading into summer, that sets you up great for when it's really busy, and also for benefiting from the longer hours and the longer sunlight that we're going to get into. So a lot of our inventories are also due, so making sure that you have systems in place that allow you the time and the space to be able to do your inventories. Do you have all the data that you need to be able to submit those, whether it's weights, whether it's genetics, anything like that. Make sure that you're starting to compile those, so when it's due, you've got all of that ready to go. So then, are you looking at doing plants? So we'll swap from the farm jobs into the plants. If it's starting to get really, really hot and you need to make sure that you know, your mulching is done on your farm, around your plants, around anything that you are not going to be able to consistently water. So for us in the orchard, we're starting to put another layer of mulch on. So we do that twice a year, and we're building on our fruit trees a layer further out and further out each year as well, to make sure that they are not having to be watered all the time. We're keeping the soil cool, we're keeping it damp for longer, which is getting better productivity from our fruit trees and our plants and our veggie garden, not only because you're not getting so much evaporation from water, but the water is able to spend longer there for further penetration. And it doesn't matter if we miss a day or two because we're busy on the farm not watering the trees, they're going to have a longer longevity. And the flies have already started this week. So making sure you've got, you know, your AeroGuard and your nets and anything else that's going to make it more comfortable for you to work on the farm. Now, going to our veggie gardens, you know, it's time to start planting out the carrots and the beetroots and the potatoes and the ginger. And then what we're going to be bringing in from the harvest now, which we've probably, this season's been a slightly earlier season than normal. So, you know, we're still harvesting broccoli, peas, onions, asparagus, those types of items. Then we can start bringing those in as well. So then as we get further into spring, we're going to be looking at tasks on the farm, such as finishing up your last round of AI projects. So you've probably already got your heat pads and all your injectables and your gloves and everything else that you need for that. But sometimes it's a good, if you're finishing up doing your programs, is keeping an inventory of what you've used, looking at what you might use the following year, and then popping in an order for that. So you're setting yourself up in advance for next year as you're finalizing those programs right now. Again, we're going over a reminder, if you haven't serviced your tractor, if you haven't serviced your bikes, if you haven't serviced your vehicles, great time to get that in before the busy season of summer and late spring kicks off, particularly if you're getting ready for harvest. Have you ordered your fuel? Have you ordered, you know, your additional food products? Do you have that extra freezer so that you can pre-make food, pop it in the freezer and be able to get it out for the extra workers and the extra long shift hours that you're going to be doing over harvest, and end your prep work beforehand. So I mentioned earlier, putting in fire breaks before it gets too hot, before you have a fire risk of hitting rocks or getting sparks or anything like that. Make sure that you're putting those fire breaks in, whether you're slashing, whether you're plowing, whether you are organising with your local fire service to do back burning, or whether you're doing that yourself. Make sure you've got permits and you're doing that on an appropriate day before fire bans come in, or with the appropriate permits and backup for when that comes in. Great time to do those now. And then if you need to later in the season, with all the growth and regeneration with rains and warmer temperatures, you can redo those without a greater risk for those fires. And it's also going to be much easier. It's going to take you less time, even though you're doing it twice, or you might be doing it twice. Doing it right now might be enough for you and your farm. So then you're going into, you know, preg testing. Have you got everything for that? What is the plan if, you know, something isn't pregnant? Are you going to sell the empties? Are you going to put them back into another breeding program? If you're starting to get dry feed in your paddocks, what is your feeding plan? What is your budget? And how are you going to work that through the summer with those cows, with those bulls, with your sheep, all that sort of thing? So have you got a feed plan? Have you got a feed budget? And what are you going to be doing with those stock if you are not destocking for the summer? Because it depends on your farm, it depends on your program, what is best for you and the farm, and have you organized that? Beautiful. So, you know, for a lot of us, show season is either winding down or about to get back into it, depending on what part of the state you are or what part of Australia you're in. So is your show gear, if you are showing sheep, cattle, goats, whatever it is that you have on your farm and you go to the shows, whether you are showing them, have you correctly packed that gear away for the season? Or do you take this opportunity now to make sure that it's prepped for your shows that are coming up. So whether you're taking livestock or whether you enjoy a day out at the show, that also works as well. So making sure that if you are using products in the clipping process, the washing process, any of that, do you need to restock that now to set you up for when you're going into show season in the next coming weeks? Or so it's there when you go, oh my goodness, show season's just starting up and I can't order my products in time. So just setting yourself up, doing the homework around that. So sort of looking towards that middle of spring, you're also looking into, you know, planting out your capsicums, your tomatoes, your zucchinis, your cucumbers, your pumpkins, your corn, and your beans. So great time to also start making sure, are you going to do those from seeds? How many weeks does it take for the seeds to come up? Or are you planning to go to town and purchasing those? In which case, do you need to pre-order them depending on where your location is and what store you're picking them up for a certain date? That goes the same for if you're home raising chickens or pigs or anything like that. When do you need to pre-order those? When do you need to pick them up? And do you have the infrastructure in place? If you're brand new to chickens and pigs and, you know, a dairy cow, all of those sorts of things, now's a great time to do your inventory and research on what you will need, what you think you will need, or if you've been doing it for the last years, what did I previously use for the season, particularly of spring and summer, and do I need to pre-order that now? Do I need to look at that now? And then as we go into harvest, you know, you're starting to look at onions, asparagus, you know, you might be starting to get an early garlic harvest, that sort of thing, which is great for the garden. And then as you look into the orchard, you know, you've done your prepping earlier in the season with that mulch, with the watering systems. So now we're looking at keeping an eye out for fruit fly, for any molds or fungus. Do we need to spray for those, whether it is an organic homemade remedy that you've researched and used before, making sure that they are, you know, food grade, they're food safe, or are you looking for something that is more commercially based that you can pick up while you're in town ordering inventory or picking it up? So that's fantastic for that. Again, if it's going to be an early harvest time for you on the farm, you know, have you prepped those meals? What do you need to prep to get into the freezer to make your life easier when it gets crazy busy, or when you get the call outs to down the farm, more call outs. Always, always, always. If you are on the farm in spring and summer, you can guarantee you'll get more call outs because a part will need to be run up, or you'll need to run into town to grab a part. So if you've got some pre-meals made up in the fridge, in the freezer, and you've only got, you know, a few minutes to pull that out, reheat it, then they are fantastic. I've spoken about these containers before on this channel, but Tupperware does an incredible Premier Glass range, which are oven safe, fridge safe, freezer safe, oven safe, and dishwasher safe. So I'm going to link that product down below. I have them in the 1 and the 1.5 litre, but they are incredible, and I believe they are back in stock with Tupperware. So grab those if you are looking for something that is super easy and super versatile, and you're not wanting to go through 1001 aluminium trays or reusable, like plastic papers. If you're wanting to look for something more resourceful, something that's safe down the farm, then that is a fantastic option. So I'm going to link that down below. But that is great to start planning and prepping in those for the harvest system, for the warmer weather, while we're out in the paddock more often, doing your water runs, doing your irrigation, that kind of thing. So then we're looking into later spring. So later spring, harvest has started, looking at redoing those fire breaks to make sure that you're keeping everything low and safe around your machinery sheds, around the households, around your water points, making sure that, you know, if you've got those fire points in and if you're keeping grass low around, you know, your dams, your troughs, your house, it also means that you can spot snakes more commonly if they are coming to you, or if you've got kids, anything like that. It is an incredible safety tool to be able to use, not only as a fire risk, but also for the safety of your family. I quite often get asked about safety on farms, so I did want to bring in the fire breaks and the snake safety. If you do not have a snake kit, please make sure that this is the time that you are ordering them and that you are keeping them on the farm. If you have a big farm, or if your house is not central to the farm, then potentially dropping those in different spots around the farm, whether that's the house, whether it's a work vehicle, whether it's a work bike, if you're doing all your work on bike, the sheep shed, the cattle yards, wherever the main center of your work is going to be through summer, up on the pivot, up on, crop, so one of your crops, one of your sheds, one of your fueling points. Where do you frequent? Where is a small distance that someone else can grab that kit and be somewhere else, or where you've got a kit on your bike, in your car for you, if that is a risk for your farm, which in Australia, lots of snakes, fairly high risk during spring and summer. So, updating those. And while we're talking about it, I have 2 reminders in my calendar per year to always restock the first aid kits. Make sure I'm checking it. If I haven't replaced it after it's been used, throughout the year, or if someone's used it and haven't logged it, I always do at least 2 checks a year to make sure that that is there, and then reorder or go in when I'm in town to the pharmacist, or to, even if it's do Woolies when you're doing your food shopping, to pick up and do that. So St. John's has an amazing range of first aid that you can actually order, and it will get sent to you on your farm. If you haven't got, a defib machine, maybe start doing the research on that, looking into that, or at least knowing where your closest is. So most rural fire stations or fire units will have those, but it's always good to know that, where it is, how far away it is, and making sure that you've got those first aid kits and those snakebite kits on hand for the summer. Also looking into burns. So burning is sometimes something that comes up, whether we're looking at sunburn or machinery burn or touching something that's too hot in summer, then making sure that we've got things like the, Glad Wrap and honey and those sorts of things on hand as well. If you don't have access to burn cream or it hasn't arrived in time, do your research on that and set that up for the farm. So I hope that has answered a lot of your questions. Yes, for late summer, you will be also continuing to harvest those carrots, onions, beetroots, lettuce, asparagus, and then we're going into strawberry season for summer, which is excellent, keeping an eye on your fruit trees. For your household, making sure that you have plenty of water on site. If you are on tank water, and the pump blows, or if you're on bore water and something happens, do you have enough water for you, your family and your workers over the summer? And where is that stored? Is that stored at the house? Is that stored somewhere out of the sun, out of the weather, in the sheds, or in containers? Do you have enough water to go? I like to do 72 hours without it, or do you have some sort of filtration system that you can hook up to, dam water, river water, if you have access to that? Making sure lots of water is on hand for you, your family and your workers. Just thinking of those worst case scenarios and those prep. And that will probably do us for the springtime. I look forward to seeing another video. If you have any other questions you want me to answer, make sure you're adding them in the comment section below. And if you want to see one of these for summer, keep your questions coming and add what you want to know for summer prep for the farm in the comments below. Like, subscribe, that helps me out, and that will also keep you in touch. If you want notifications every time we post, which is twice a week, Tuesdays and Thursdays, hit the notification bell so you don't miss an episode. Until then, I will talk to you soon. Thanks for joining me here on the farm.